Well, man, I didn't even realize that that you were in the military. Like your stuff on social media, I don't see it as like veteran owned or anything like that. Is that something like a strategic thing you do?
Well, we mention it in our bio and our mission, things like that, but we're not like loud and like extreme with it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a two-edged sword. It's like, oh, look at me, I served, like give me lots of free stuff. Um, it's something that I believe in as, a patriot and a believer in the ideas of the melting pot kind of country where everyone, theoretically has a fair shake and a shot at being an entrepreneur and making their dreams a reality. I think that is an opportunity worth fighting for. And I don't necessarily want a lot of kudos for that, but it is why I made what I made.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. A lot of the veteran owned really lean into it and expect the support. It's kind of it's interesting you said that and the way you left it off. It's yeah.
Well, the support there, like the people gravitate towards veteran owned companies a lot. We do a lot of farmers markets and we go to farmers markets and stuff. And if you see veteran owned and there's another Army vet or a military person or just whatever branch of the military, and they'll zone in on that one business to help support. That's an awesome community. My wife served in the Army, and there's a code. I don't understand it, but there's a code between military people that were, have served, and the way that y'all support each other is pretty admirable.
It's true. And my marketing team would probably be like, you need to say it prouder and louder.
You're an idiot. Come on.
Where's the flag? Show the flag, man.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of vets who, aren't wearing the hats, especially, Iraq and Afghanistan. There's a lot of mixed feelings about, did we do any good there? Are these infinite wars like helpful? And so someone who deeply believes in the country, it's like, it's painful. So, you don't want to make a mockery of the people who sacrifice for it. At the same time, like, I believe this country can be something that's really inspiring. It's just that, we got to stop invading our neighbors and messing up their stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a double-edged sword for sure. Before we get too far, Phillip, can you introduce yourself and let everyone know what company you're with?
So my name is Phillip Meece, and I'm an entrepreneur. I served in the military. I really wanted a combat ration that wouldn't rot your guts out. So I made the Carnivore Bar.
Yeah, dude. My wife tells me horror stories about stuff that she had to eat while she was in Afghanistan. And like, it was the way that she describes it is not appealing. And it kind of it's kind of shocking that we spend so much money on all these like military gadgets, and you got like these infrared like binoculars, you got these badass guns, and then you get this shitty food to fuel your body with.
Yeah, it's really the Army in Army regulations, the Army that's on paper is absolutely flawless thing of beauty. But when you get into in the field, how the cookie crumbles, it's not so beautiful. So, it's really difficult to get logistically, to get food, water, bullets, to get all the things everywhere that they need to go in the battle space. Especially during asymmetric warfare, there's no like front line that advances forward. The front line is a little bit everywhere. And so the supplies just don't necessarily get distributed correctly. And so we stayed at a SF base, and we got a chef made us egg white omelets. And then we went to the laundry depot, and there was no laundry facilities. There was just somebody ready to take our laundry from some foreign country, and they took our laundry. They did our laundry within an hour, and then they folded it up nice and neat and handed it back to us. And then we went a month without showers and food. So we were just eating MREs. That's it. And we were just completely abandoned. So like you have the egg white omelets and you're like, what do we do? It's so posh. It's ridiculous. You're getting your laundry folded. And then you're just forgotten about. You don't exist anymore. You just fell off the map and there's nothing. And the same soldiers at that posh base, like they had free laptops. They had like mobile gaming devices and all kinds of gadgets and gizmos that were supposed to go out to the front lines. Like we had nothing, barely any power. We had a diesel generator to run comms, and then we just had a deep like refrigerator to make water cold. So we had cold water with our MREs and a Connex and just moon dust, and that was it. That was all our supplies. A general came by and said, "This is the worst. This is the worst outpost in all of Afghanistan."
Oh my!
I was like, "Awesome, gold star. That's what I want to be remembered for. Worst conditions." But it wasn't that bad, honestly. I have nothing to complain about compared to the guys in Iraq who did the invasion, and that was a whole like. I mean, that was a terrible experience.
Yeah.
So like, I came back with all my fingers and toes. I'm very happy for the experience I had, but like, just to see the supplies get bottlenecked and stopped, like at the FOB, at the big bases, and then not get out, not have a coordinated kind of effort or plan for our forces there. Really, retrospectively looking back, you can kind of see like there was no great vision. Every few years, there's a new commander in chief. There's a new general, there's a new plan, but you kind of have to spend most of your time cleaning up the mess from the previous plan. You don't really get fully into your plan. Then you hand off the baton to someone else, and they disagree with everything you've done, and they spend the next 4 years undoing it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like democracies. I don't know. We really need to have like 1 to 2 year wars.
That almost sounds like corporate America a little bit. Like some of these corporations are the same. Yeah,
we need a second-term president who isn't up for re-election, and we need to get it done in 2 years. Otherwise, it's kind of a crapshoot because we're just doing a little bit of a bunch of different plans of a bunch of people who don't see eye to eye. And so, when it came down to food, the DFACs, the army cooks, they were heroes. They were making the best with what they had. But as soon as you broke camp, you go out into the wilderness and you have no support and you're eating MRE day in, day out. That's where I really feel like the military dropped the ball. Like that thing hasn't been updated in decades. And so we know a lot more about human nutrition and the needs of performance athletes on the battlefield. Like, why can't we get healthy food to the battlefield? And I figured out the answer. The answer is expense. It's very expensive, very hard to do. It's taken a lot of passion and dedication to bring what's essentially a Native American tradition called pemmican and make it up to the modern food safety standards.
What is the pemmican? I've never heard of that.
So pemmican is what my carnivore bar is based off of. It is it's travel grease is what it roughly translates into. And what they do is they take dried meat, they smoke it, and they get it really, really, really dry. So dry, like if you were making homemade jerky, you could barely bite into it. And then take a mortar and pestle. I actually brought visual aid.
There we go.
Oh, nice.
So this is a mortar and pestle.
We call that a molcajete in Mexico.
Yeah. Make guacamole out of that.
Yeah. So you take this and you take a whole bison and you'd put it through this process. It's going to take you some hours.
Yeah.
And anyway, once you're done doing that, then you render in like a cast iron pot. You render all the fat. So you separate the fat, you cut it down into very small pieces, then you render it down, then you filter it out, probably through cheesecloth or some kind of whatever you can muster. And then you take those two items, the pulverized dried beef and the rendered fat. It doesn't have any collagen or sinew in it. It's all been just the drippings or the renderings. You take that It's suet, vitamin soluble fats. It's like really, really high grade back and kidney fat from the bison. And then you take the meat, which is extremely dry, and you pack it together. You make these little balls. And that is essentially pretty much shelf stable all by itself. But they'd put it in a raw hide bag and they'd seal it with tallow, and that would make it even more shelf stable. You can't use cured leather because you use things that are not, you don't want it in contact with your food to cure leather, like urine and things like that. So it's a microbial reaction to cure leather. So it's kind of not a food surface. So you take rawhide leather, it does need to stay dry. But when you cap it with that tallow, you've created an oxygen barrier. So it doesn't oxidize the meat or the fats. The fats are really, they're already saturated animal fats. So you're setting yourself up for success. And that's the beauty of this ancestral tradition, is there's no such thing as a refrigerator back when they made this. When they broke camp, especially the Plains Native Americans, there's an 800-mile loop of bison, millions of bison. But you can imagine like the agony of missing that 800-mile, like it's going to be 6 months before they come around again. So if they're a couple hundred miles east or west, like you don't know exactly where they're going to be, and different predator movements, different seasons, different terrains, how wet the ground is. The herd could go wherever it wants. It's wild. And so you don't know when you break camp, when you're following these bison, if you're going to have a successful hunt for a couple weeks.
Right.
So the pemmican is your lifeline. They wouldn't necessarily eat it every day, but it's this vital emergency life-saving tool that they would use for camp to camp to camp. The teepees, they're 100% mobile. And so they could just break camp. They send everyone on the road. Let's follow the meat. But then, living a carnivore lifestyle. But they, have that one vulnerability, is that, there's no fridge, there's no base camp, there's no ice box or, ice cooler. Like the Westerners used to do, is they used to put ice on like granite slabs down in the cellar, and then they would kind of sort of refrigerate things for a little bit.
Right.
But you're talking about getting a week or two, not months and months. So this pemmican tradition is unique in that it doesn't need hermectants or spices or tons and tons of salt. Salt's really hard to get in the middle of the plains, especially in a landlocked mass like North America. It's like the sea is a ways away. Like you don't have just blocks of salt that you can just cure your meat with, like other civilizations did around the Mediterranean. And that's where it's very famous. Soldiers were paid a salary, which is sol. Sal is salt. They were paid in salt as their wage.
Wow. And you said this pemmican?
Pemmican. 2 M's.
Okay, pemmican. Yeah, I'll say it different with the 2 M's. How you said it lasted a week's time of travel?
No. So if you seal it correctly, you get all the moisture out of it, and you get it absolutely sealed away from oxygen. And we seal ours in Mylar. It has an unknown shelf life, meaning people have seen it 50 years.
What?
Yeah, that's wild.
So the two factors in basically spoilage are oxygen and their microbes. So if you have a water activity, which is the availability of the moisture in the food, is below 0.3, even fungus can't get at it because it doesn't have enough water, available water to exist, to grow. So even though you have food there, the fungus can't rot it, mold can't get at it, bacteria can't survive on it. So, it's basically innate as long as those two factors remain stable. No oxygen, no moisture, you're good to go. And so for me, as a carnivore who's eating a meat-based diet, who has this experience as a soldier who wants an MRE that's not going to rot my gut, because that's how I got sick and on the carnivore diet, it was like, oh wow. Well, I had a light bulb moment, and I was like, okay, cool. I'll take my experiences of pain and frustration and turn it into a product.
That's pretty cool. Did you go and like visit it with the Native Americans to learn the process, or did you just Google this shit online and start doing it at the house? Like, what was that entire process like?
So I basically remembered it from school, and then I researched it. And then immediately, like the mortar and pestle, that's not going to fly with modern food safety. I had to redesign it. So I had to basically start with USDA regulations. So I started with a big book of red tape that I have to navigate. It's like, okay, this is my book of red tape. How can I make this ancestral recipe, which is basically dried meat and fat 50% by weight? So if I have 50 grams of dried meat, then I need 50 grams of rendered tallow. Now, meat is mostly water, so that ends up being a catastrophic amount of meat. But that's okay, because balanced with the fat, not only is it edible, so you're not doing it too dry, and you're not eating like a cinnamon challenge, but you're also getting all the energy components. So if you're doing a zero carb kind of keto diet, you're not drained of energy because you're eating just lean meat, because that's also a problem. Settlers who went on the Oregon Trail who couldn't find big game like an elk or moose or, and the bison, they died of rabbit starvation, which is if you only find like squirrels and rabbits, you're only eating lean meat, you're not eating an energy component, because you can either do fat or you can do carbs. But once you're all the way lean, like there's only so far you want to go lean wise. You need energy from some kind of component to meet your 2,000 calories a day. So if you want to go keto, you can make ketones, you can survive off fat. It's harder, there's adaptations, but you can't go without carbs and fat. That's a no-go for the human body and human physiology. So that was, kind of built into the recipe that they had these two components. They had this recipe. I just needed to make it USDA compliant, and then I could offer this as a product.
What was that process like? Like going through that, the compliance check, and you doing something that's not real popular, because there's like everywhere you turn around, there's plant-based bars, there's the nuts and the chocolate. There's not a whole lot of meat-based bars out there. So was that a tough process to get approved?
Well, yes. Yes. So not real popular. It's not the way I would frame it. I would frame it as not real profitable. And so that's a very, very important difference, because if you want performance, if you want longevity, if you want vitality, this is the way to go. But if you want something with a margin, you wouldn't pick meat.
Right.
You'd pick sawdust. You'd take imitation chocolate drizzle. and then you'd pay some big celebrity to hawk it, right? That's how you make money. But if you want to do something that no one has ever done before, that processed food kind of stick, it's tired. Like there's a million different protein bars. Nothing differentiates them. They all have a celebrity spokesperson. They're all boring. They all taste like cardboard. It's like, okay, yeah, that's been done. It's like, so we kind of need something new. It's like, I might have thinner margins initially, but if I can ever get big enough to get military contracts that I want to get and put this in the hands of soldiers, like it's a long-term game. Because I think that the data is pretty clear that meat-based, carnivore, keto, low carb, whatever you want to call it, that kind of animal-based nutrition, it's really doing well performance-wise. Like people are taking that and they are, reducing their injuries, they're increasing their physical strength, they're increasing their stamina. They're learning how to do the keto athletes are learning how to do the long distance, long term on ketones. And it's a whole emerging science. It's like, it seems really, really good for long endurance athletes to go ketogenic. It's a beta oxidation. It's a really efficient metabolic pathway if you can adapt to it, because, there is an adaptation period. But if you can get through that, the performance gains and the energy efficiency gains of burning fat versus carbohydrate, not getting all the inflammation of all those carbs and all the insulin ups and downs. There's a lot of benefits for trying that way, if it works for you.
So replicating that tool behind you, did you have to get innovative with manufacturing?
Oh yeah, definitely. So for us, we are not currently in a USDA facility. We're in a commercial kitchen serving direct to consumer. So that's, we're splitting hairs here, but I made a HACCP plan according to the USDA guidelines because that's where I want to go. So, for example, if you're dealing with meat, you have to have critical control points. So Native American tradition, you're there, you're out in the field, there's insects, there's bugs, there's flies, you have fire and smoke to prevent the insects from preying on your food, right? So you have smoke fires, then you have fire generating heat that's drying it out but not burning it. And so you have this careful balance and art form in nature, unsheltered, making this dry meat. And so for us, we have to figure out how to meet the internal control points to make sure that there's no microbiological dangers. Listeria is the big one that we're trying to prevent. So we get inspected meat from USDA facility that's processed, dress exactly to the standard. And then we take that and we transform it according to our HACCP plan, which means reaching a certain internal temp. So same as any restaurant or, any steakhouse, they're going to make sure that they temp it and they get it exactly right. Not only so that they're getting medium rare, well done, and all the different grades, so you get what you order, but also to make sure that they're following a health code. And then they have that little warning sign. Any steakhouse that's worth their salt is going to say, like, if you go past this line, you're doing it at your own risk. Right. So we have to be above that line. Essentially that we have to meet those guidelines, the best practices of making a meat product to make sure that it's safe. And so on top of that, we also do water activity. Water activity is our big metric to make sure that we've gotten it dry enough. So we have our critical control points to make sure that it's safe. Then we have our checks to make sure that it's dry enough. And then once it's dry enough, there's a few trade secrets in there I'm going to skip over. But
come on,
once it's dry enough, then we make sure it's absolutely 100% sealed in that Mylar bag. That Mylar bag is actually really critical because most cellophane or just plastic actually has some transmission of oxygen and moisture through it. Like if you put something in a Ziploc bag for a week, it's fine. But if you put something in a Ziploc bag for a month, you'll notice that it's stale. And it's like, well, that's because there's a natural transmission of oxygen through the Ziploc bag because it's not a very high grade of plastic. And there's also transference with plastics too. So you want to make sure you're using something metallized that's not going to have transference, especially if you have a bunch of health nuts like my community. They don't want any plastic in their food. So we're using silicone, we're using stainless steel, we're sealing everything, we're making sure that it's preserved from oxygen and moisture at every single step, which is adding a lot of expense. But that's doing it the hard right way for our clientele. And our clientele, they will know if I skip a step. They will let me know.
That's funny. We talk a lot about, the vegan and the carnivore communities, and we enjoy talking with folks with different beliefs. But it's almost to the point now where the carnivore community, like the hardcore carnivore community, is almost as bad as the vegan community. Like there's no leeway there. It's like you're like I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there, but you can't have peanut butter on because peanut butter is a seed oil or whatever. It's pretty intense now, but with each community.
But how many kids are allergic to peanuts?
Yeah. What the hell happened with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good question. Why are so many people allergic? And so from the carnivore point of view, because peanuts are a seed, there are chemical compounds in the seed that seed doesn't want to be preyed upon. So like it's not in the peanut's best interest that its genetic material is eaten. Like, but that's not true for like an apple, right? Like the apple wants to be eaten because its seeds are preserved and they survive the digestion process. But like nuts, they have these shells that are supposed to be like armor to keep predators from getting at their genetic material so that, their next generation can go on. So when you're looking at things from an evolutionary point of view, there are certain things that, benefit from working with animals, like fruits. And there are things that don't benefit from working with animals, like seeds. And so from the carnivore, like evolutionary lens, they're just like, well, it's probably not good for you. The fact that everyone's getting allergic to these things might mean, it's just a hypothesis that these chemicals, these lectins, these kind of these phytates, this phytic acid, they might be like molecular inflammatory signals that are affecting some people. Now, some people can eat them and they're fine. And other people, they go to the hospital. They need an EpiPen because they work in a facility with peanuts. And it's like, oh, wow, that's really serious. I don't react that bad to peanuts. But I found that when I tried to clean up my diet, I really like craft beer. I did like past tense. So I really like the hoppy IPAs, all that stuff. I was really into it. And, I always had like 10, 15 pounds, probably could lose, but, like my craft brews, like my bourbon every once in a while. I was like, it's probably the alcohol that's keeping those 10 to 15 pounds on. Well, I had a event where I had the opportunity to basically clean up my diet 100% and get off alcohol altogether. I found that there was something still wrong with my diet. So I was eating as clean paleo as I could possibly eat: nuts, seeds, green leafy vegetables, wild salmon, grass-finished beef. I'm like, this is by all accounts and purpose the most healthful diet you can eat. And for me, I still had that 10 to 15. No matter what I did, I could do fasting, intermittent fasting, but as long as I was eating lots of green vegetables and seeds, it was messing me up. And so thanks to Michaela Peterson and the whole movement 2018, they're talking about going carnivore, Sean Baker. And I was like, well, shoot, what do I have to lose? I'll try that. Instantly felt better. I lost 30 pounds. I didn't know I had 30 pounds to lose. And my brain fog, depression, everything cleared up and I started feeling amazing. So if they get a little like zealous, that's why. It's like they've been trying all this stuff, frustrated, and it's just not working for them. And so they're reaching at straws. They find something that works. I've heard the same thing happen to vegans, to give them, to each their due. Vegans who are eating processed junk and food, and then they go and they eat fruit-based and they feel amazing. It's like, you can't blame them. They're enthusiastic because they've found something that works for them.
Yeah.
And I think that enthusiasm is forgivable, especially if you can understand it, as mature adults in the proper context. It's like, hey, good for you. It's working for you. I'm so happy for you that you've found this thing that's helping you to thrive. For a lot of our customers, that's a meat-based diet, but I don't fault anybody. Whatever you're doing that's working, like, more power to you.
Yeah. So the passion's from the journey and healing.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little earlier you had to switch to this because of your health. What things were you dealing with, and what things did it heal when you went carnivore? I'm interested because, and I want to hear more about this alcohol too, because I'm trying to eliminate it too, and I think I have that extra 15 to 20 from that. But I'd like to know where you're at.
Booze.
Huh?
It may not be the booze.
Oh, do you still drink?
No, I don't. But
okay,
for me, it wasn't the booze that was the biggest factor.
Really?
It was green leafy vegetables, which blew my mind.
That was
not my first, second, or sixth guess.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
How I got sick. So no shit, there was 2012 Afghanistan. Malaria is endemic to the region. So for us, they gave us this giant horse pill to take every day of doxycycline. So I'm taking this anti-malarial, which is making everyone feel terrible. Every time someone takes the pill, they feel terrible. So most soldiers stop taking the pill. Now, this is violating our orders, but I'm trying to be goody two shoe medic. I was a Boy Scout. Now I'm a soldier trying to do the hard right thing, taking my pill every day, but eating this crap food in addition to it. So it was like this 1-2 punch of just like digestion devastation. So I'm eating glue and taking antibiotics with my glue, and I'm not loving it. So I'm gaining weight, and I'm really discouraged, and I'm having a hard time balancing my training because I'm doing CrossFit at the time, and I'm trying to like go full out on the workouts. But then we go on patrol, and I don't want to be wasted. I don't want my legs to be jelly when I'm on patrol, and I have to save someone's life. And so it's like we're pulling all-nighters, we're not sleeping, we're eating shit food, we're taking antibiotics, and it's like I'm having a hard time balancing my training. I don't want to, kind of coast through my training. I want to send it. I want to lift heavy weights, but I'm also a little, nervous because I don't want to wipe myself out. And then we go into, a serious scenario where my fitness is going to determine my ability to do my job, to keep myself safe and keep my guys safe. So there's this kind of impossible situation nutritionally, environmentally, and, job description wise, where you can't do all these things well. And my health just really suffered. And when I came back, we reintroduced alcohol. Everyone became slobbering drunks. It was terrible. But we started working out again. We started our runs again. I got injured, and it was just like, because we went from 0 to 60, and then everyone got injured, and everyone was on profile, and it was just kind of a shit show. But eventually we started getting the hang of things. But then for me, that was like the end of my term of service. So I was getting out of the service. I was like, okay, good riddance. Like, I can barely handle that anymore. I'm having trouble focusing. And so they had me on Ritalin, methylphenidate. So I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, man, I'm having a really hard time focusing. And so turns out is just one of the symptoms of dysbiosis. So, your gut microbiome is sensitive to antibiotics, especially a long term of antibiotics. Alcohol's not particularly great for it either. So it's just like one thing after another. I've just set myself up for this wrecking ball scenario. And I go back to school, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life. I am a medic. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go, maybe I'll be a paramedic, make $20 an hour and give people Narcan. So I'm there in the ER and on a 12-hour shift, and there's a nurse retiring, and there's cake and there's pizza. And I look at all these rooms, and there's somebody who has an alcohol problem who is homeless, and then there's someone with kidney failure, and there's someone with dementia, and there are all these different like metabolic issues with carbohydrates and just like horrible health outcomes. Like, a lot of these people are just diet and lifestyle would have solved like 80% of that. And so we're just, all the patients are dealing with metabolic issues. There's free cake and pizza in the break room, and all the nurses and all the doctors are stressed out of their gourds, and they're overweight. They're obese, BMI wise. And I'm like, oh man. So, it's the 11th hour. I'm on my feet. I'm starving. I go to the the vending machine out of desperation, is like, maybe there's something. And there's Jack Links. There's just a little like 1 ounce, tiny little bag of jerky. And I'm like, dude, this is completely unacceptable. This is not going to work. I can't eat keto. I can't even eat low carb. I'm just surrounded by a bunch of junk. There's got to be a better way. And then I remembered from grade school hearing about this pemmican thing. That same summer, I was going to try carnivore, and I was just like, It just clicked. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, instead of making barely enough to survive, working terrible shift work, it's going to destroy my health further and it's not on point. Go carnivore. Maybe I develop a product for other carnivores. Maybe I could be of service to the community and help them out because there's nothing really that has enough high fat that you can live off of. Because the Jack Links, even though they're covered in soy and wheat and their meat, they don't have any fat. So if you're going all day, 12 hours on your feet, running around, cleaning beds, treating patients, doing labs, it's like you don't really have the energy there. And so I could pack my lunch, but they have a tiny little mini fridge. And that really, doctor, volunteer paramedic. Yeah, no, there's no room for that. So it's like the fridge space is extremely limited here in the doctor's, lounge. And I'm on the very, very bottom of that totem pole. So I need something shelf stable that's high fat, that's compliant with carnivore, so I can eat any kind of semblance of this way of eating and do my job, do what I was trained to do. And so I couldn't. And I thought I would solve that problem as kind of my way forward, take my obstacle and make it my path.
Wow.
That's a good story.
Yeah. No, it's so funny because we work in corporate America too. And, or also as well, I guess, but, that's all we're surrounded by. Like every time there's an event, there's never anything good to eat. There's not a good substitute. And it's always fucking pizza or cake and ice cream, or if there's something good that, a group does, it's like, let's go out and celebrate with alcohol and food. So it's tough, like in our society. I don't know if it's that way amongst like other cultures, but as Americans, we celebrate with carbs and sugar.
And booze.
Yeah.
It's just like, and you become like this sick in the mud where like, oh no, I don't want to drink. It's like, well, are you saying it's not a celebratory time? Are you not celebrating this deal? Are you not celebrating this accomplishment? It's like, because we've tied celebration with these little treats, it's like, but there's a problem there, because if you're saying the treat is a celebration, it's like you can't have a celebration every day. What if your company's doing really well? That doesn't mean you should be just slammed drunk all the time like Rick from Rick and Morty. It's like, that's not healthy to do. I mean, the show makes that much at least clear.
So when you drank a lot, I mean, I assume you drank a lot because you're kind of alluding to it. How did you get off of it? I'm curious.
So for me, it's kind of an interesting story. I hesitate to tell because it does. I don't want to.
You don't have to share anything you don't want to.
No,
I'm just curious for
it's
me because I want to kick it as well.
He's like, I was a stripper and I was down.
I was down to my last dollar.
So, I was trying to get my health right. I was trying to find meaning. I was a big Jordan Peterson fan. Kind of sitting in my basement, drinking, kind of like miserable, and trying to get my life together. And I was trying to think about something meaningful I could do, and I'm sick. So I'm doing this like post-deployment kind of get back in my life, get out of my funk, to like find out my path in life. Quit being such a miserable, waste of space. And my cousin got really, really deathly ill, and her liver was absolutely crapped out, like cirrhotic, non-alcoholic cirrhotic. So she wasn't doing what I was doing. And so she needed a liver donor. Turns out I was a match. But I had to clean up my diet, my lifestyle in order to entertain the idea of giving part of my liver to her. So I had someone's life on the line, and that was my motivator.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I wish I could say it was my willpower, and I prayed a lot, found Jesus, and he squared me away. But no, it was like, if you don't do this, your family member is going to die. And it's like, okay, I'll put down the booze for that.
Wow.
That's just as impressive. I mean, for you to, that's a huge, I mean, right? It's a huge sacrifice to go through surgery and give part of your liver up. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I didn't know you could like chop
it
up
grows
a piece.
back. So they gave the left lobe.
Oh, it grows back?
And when the hell are like when is our arms gonna grow? Oh wow, look.
Oh no.
Dude, that's an awesome scar though.
Yeah.
You can make up
cool.
make up some lies about it.
What a cousin.
Yeah, some saber.
What a cousin.
Say in Afghanistan or something.
Yeah.
No, it's I'm not that creative, unfortunately.
Yeah, have 2 stories for that. Yeah. But this is actually a good enough story to stick with the story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Long story short, that was I was looking for a meeting. I was following Jordan Peterson. I was like, I got to quit being so useless. And then that just like plopped on my lap. And I was like, okay, here's my sign. Like, you asked for a meeting and here it is. It's like, okay, well, do you want to do something meaningful with your life or not? And so when I cut out alcohol and I was just eating leafy greens, my guts, the dysbiosis, they weren't dealing with the greens like they did pre-deployment. Like pre-deployment, I was fine. I could eat whatever I want. But after the deployment, and I'm still not 100%. I'm not, I didn't have abs. It's like, I'm still not 100%, but the carnivore diet helps me feel my best. It helps keep my mind and those symptoms of anxiety, depression, kind of lack of motivation, all those symptoms are gone when I just eat meat. And so when I was eating these green leafy vegetables and lean meat and trying to be as healthy as I could possibly be, because I'm going to give part of my liver to my cousin and I can't, give her something that's all polluted. I had to get right first for several months. And that broke my addiction to alcohol. And then I realized there was gains on the table. I wasn't just magically healed out of alcohol. There was something fundamentally wrong with my digestion that hadn't been right since Afghanistan. Not blaming the army, malaria is a serious threat. But for me, that's what sent me sideways. And so that's how I got back.
I love that you're a Jordan Peterson fan. What bought you to Jordan Peterson? And I wonder how many lives that he's changed. Because since I read his book, I struggle with a lot of stuff that you mentioned too. And I'm in this journey where I'm doing a lot of self-reflection of how I treat people and the way I talk to people. And some of his stuff is pretty enlightening, man. It makes me self-reflect. So what brought you to Jordan Peterson?
Well, I thought, he talks really frankly and straightforwardly about being miserable and being a cynic. And so when I saw the military, I started the conversation kind of saying what is all this for? What did we go and do over there in Afghanistan where we tried to do good? We burnt marijuana and opium, and then we gave out free wheat seed. But the economics completely don't work. You get $20 per bushel of opium and 25 cents per bushel of wheat, and you're doing it by hand, with hand tools. It's like one of these feeds my family, one of them doesn't, and yet we're doing this kind of futile effort. And so it really did seem kind of meaningless. And our brigade lost 21 soldiers, over 700 injuries that occurred during that year that we were deployed. And so I was part of the brigade's surgeon cell where I saw all of those medical incidents. And so there's okay, here, this person got blown up, this person got shot, this is what happened, this is the treatment, here's a protocol. And then I go in their medical records and look up, okay, they did a revision on the wound, they're fitting for a prosthesis, and it's heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. And it's just really sad. And so-and-so's wife left him, and then he slept with a prostitute, and then got an STD, then got treated for STD, and then went to behavioral health, and then got meds, and then killed himself. And it's dude, this it's so heavy, the cost of war. And it's to not accomplish anything. It just left me with this feeling of deep cynicism and kind of rage. And so alcohol is not the answer, and that was not a good fit for me. Depression wasn't, being a cynic or being full of bile and hatred wasn't. So it's like, I need to take a serious step back from this dark, Dostoevsky kind of stuff where, you're sitting and stewing in your own like sob story. And it's like, I need to do something to make the world a better place. I need to find a problem that I resonate with and fix it. So the liver was round one. And round two is making this healthy food that solves the problem that I was stuck in. So people who can't stop to make their food want something super clean, super healthy. Now I solve that problem. And each day I wake up and it's hard and it's complicated, but I feel like I'm doing something that makes my life worthwhile that I am perfectly suited to do. And that gives me enough meaning to just keep going without kind of descending and spiraling into my pity party. Because I mean, nobody wants to be around that guy who's just always down, always negative, like, oh, this is all messed up and this is all corrupt, always talking politics. It's draining.
Yeah.
It's like I want to be the kind of guy who's like, no, there's hope, there's opportunities, there's things we can go pursue, there's adventures we can go have together, we can connect with people, and we can make a difference.
Yeah. That's refreshing, dude. Being able to identify with the problem and make it become not only your passion, but it's also a paying job. Because, dude, I see Carnivore Bar everywhere, every damn Instagram post, and I follow the carnivore community. I'm not a strict carnivore, but we've talked to a bunch of them on the podcast, and dude, that bar is everywhere, man. So you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you.
People love it. So
we are true believers. We're trying not to be dogmatic, but we really believe very strongly that it can be very helpful. And there's just not a lot of other options out there that meet the same high quality standards that we have. And so we try to support these affiliates because these people who are doing this natural way of life, they don't have a lot of gadgets, gizmos, and supplements to sell. So there's not a way to support them. So we try to use affiliate marketing to support our community as they support us. So that's why you see us a lot, is that affiliate relationship. Yeah. Is we have built into our price a commission for them. And so that way they can be supported in telling their story of what worked for them. It's like we have people who have MS, we have people who have like all kinds of horrible afflictions. One person I know, was less than 90 pounds, wasting away, like dying, C. diff, everything you can imagine, nothing was working. And now she's vibrant, picture of health, just had a kid.
Wow.
Healthy as could be, like on death's door, autoimmune conditions, skin conditions, like weeping sores from their face, fertility issues, anything and everything that you can imagine that's horrible and painful and awful. People have been fixing it.
Yeah.
And it may not be a panacea. It doesn't fix everything. It's definitely not going to let some of our soldiers lost their legs grow back, but maybe it'll help in the bedroom. It's like it's like get your hormones right. There is a possibility for a less bad for sure. Everybody.
Yeah,
and I think that's worth fighting for, wherever that is for you.
Yeah. We need more people like you. I mean, business owners like you that don't cut short, cut corners, and then just like you're saying, all of the materials you use, and you're trying to satisfy the people from their feedback. It just nobody does that anymore. It's about margins, like you said, and just meeting, doing better every year. Yeah,
we can't cut corners. We can't compromise because our people are too sick. Like, it would immediately have a negative impact on our business model if we offered less quality. And so basically the recipe for all food products is something that we can't follow. Our price is our price, because it goes to ranchers who are doing it regeneratively, which means adding 1.5 years to the cow's life. It's processed in a way that, spares no expense. It takes a week by hand. We're not using a mortar and pestle, but it's almost, it's very, very much by hand that we're making each bar. And so because we do it that hard right way, we're doing it in the States, sourced in the States, nothing from Australia. It just is going to cost more. And it's like, is that worth it to support American businesses and American ranchers, and have the food that you're eating come from the same continent that you're on and living in? It's like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But for us who value our health and want to live a sustainable life in a system that's sustainable, we're tired of, I don't know how much into Bitcoin you guys are, but like this kind of fiat system where it just seems like this runaway lies where all materials are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and they're eroding in the value systemically. And it's like, no, I want a car that runs for a decade. I don't want it just 2 years and then it's smoke. I want a house that is going to stay up and not just immediately leak and mold through. It's like, I want food that's going to heal my body, that's going to help me in my performance and help me live my best life and pursue my entrepreneurial goals. I don't want flavored cardboard that just placates me to my next illness, to my next pharmaceutical. It's like, there's no way to live.
Yeah. There's a lot of heavy marketing put into the plant-based diet, or it doesn't necessarily have to be plant-based, but just marketing in general about health and like diet. Sure. And I think your affiliates are doing a great job of, showing, pulling the curtain back a little bit and showing how a meat-based diet is beneficial. But how do you tackle that? I think, these podcasts and YouTube videos and these social media accounts are helping people, or educate people about regenerative agriculture, about clean meat, about no processed foods. But what type of emphasis does the Carnivore Bar put into that educational piece, I guess?
Well, I'm a rabid libertarian, so, don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. Like, think for yourself. Like, I don't know, this worked for me. Like, for me, I had this weird experience with the liver thing that, like, the green leafy vegetables were holding me back. Is that more due to dysbiosis, or is that more due to the proper human diet is meat-based? I really don't know. But how many people have gotten a course of antibiotics and gotten derailed? Like, oh, I was great in my 20s, blew out my knee, got a surgery, got antibiotics. Now I have this permanent, like, little mini keg going on. It's like, what happened? It's like, I don't know. Could a meat-based diet help? Maybe a plant-based diet would help. I think that the evolutionary lens of looking at it, like the nuts and seeds and things like that makes more sense to me. But that's also what's worked for me. So that's my bias. And I think that everyone should do, experiment and do what works for them, and realize, like, a lot of these things that carnivores are concerned about, like seed oils, are on every cook service in America. So if you are allergic to seed oils, which are very vulnerable fats that are exposed to high heat and then deodorized, so you can't smell the rotting, rancid fat, we think that's inflammatory. And where a lot of us are eating it unbeknownst to us because we can't taste it, it's just very, very cheap. And so it's the easiest way to slick the top of your cook surface. And so if you're not getting steak that's cooked in butter or tallow or these healthy fats that are more ancestral or more evolutionary based, you're kind of vulnerable to that, where you just don't know what you're eating. And in the case of you don't know what you're eating, well, you can't entertain either hypothesis. You can't really go down on a plant-based healthy diet or an animal-based healthy diet if you don't know what you're eating. So I think the education is into what you're eating and how food is made, and then you should decide for yourself.
Do you have a engineering background? Because I know I heard a lot of medical, but the way you speak, did you get a lot of this education from trial and error through making your product, or do you have some sort of additional educational background?
So I don't have an educational background in engineering. A lot of it was just necessity. So science and medicine has really helped as a background. definitely when keeping areas clean for microbiology. So the two biggest vectors, the oxygen and the moisture, that fits right in with medicine. We're constantly checking your blood saturation for oxygen, your SpO2. We're constantly making sure that you're breathing, you have, all your mucosal membranes are working correctly, like you have good patent airway. It's like all these things that are just natural to medicine, especially battlefield medicine, is very mechanical. So, a doctor might look at all kinds of history, but like a combat medic is like, keep the blood in. It's more like a plumber.
Don't die.
Keep breathing.
Like, I'm gonna keep the blood in, and I'm gonna keep the airway open, and then I'm gonna send you to someone who can actually help. It's all tourniquets. It's keeping airways. It's keeping things open. It's keeping lungs from collapsing. It's that kind of stuff. It's delivering morphine if necessary, not only for that patient but also for the people who survive that patient, and medevac that person compassionately so that everyone else can focus on the mission at hand. So it's not directly tied to the meat, but given that I feel like there's patient outcomes associated with the delivered product, like they are going, like if I have too much histamine, if I have any kind of error in my product, they're going to have an inflammatory reaction. They're going to have an autoimmune reaction. They're going to have the disease symptoms return. For me, it almost feels like the same kind of responsibility. It's like if I deliver or serve a product that's going to aggravate one of their medical cases, for me, it's not that different than my original mission. And the AMED slogan is to conserve the fighting strength. That's your mission. Conserve the fighting strength. It's like everything you do is to, provide the medicine that's going to keep the force fighting. So don't let good soldiers die. Keep everyone in good health and good spirits and good morale. A lot of what I did in my unit was counseling. Yeah. So it was like, it was just basically like anything and everything that the soldiers need to stay strong. And the thing that I couldn't help them with was a lot of sleep issues and digestive issues, and those are related. So I was like, well, I need to create the tool so that, if a version of me exists in the future, they will have this tool that I was lacking to provide healthy food on the battlefield so that they can stop these soldiers from experiencing the same, agony and pain that my soldiers experienced.
That's very cool, man. I know we're running on time. I got two questions for you. How
Sure.
close are you to getting the Carnivore Bar into the military's hands? Is it I'm sure that process has got to be damn near impossible, but how close are you?
Probably a few years yet.
Really?
So it's a funding question as well as is just being able to scale. So if you're locked on the quality like we are, there's only so fast you're going to scale. And then people are like, people are passing you up. And it's like, I don't care. It's like, I'm not going to compromise. And so we're going to be the tortoise. I think we're going to win those contracts because our product is extremely shelf stable, but we have to have that validated. We have to do 4-year shelf life studies. We have to do all these labs and all this engineering. And, I don't particularly have a background in it. I'm showing some aptitude, but a lot of it is learned through trial and error.
Yeah.
And so through those trial and errors, we have to scale up. And if a batch goes wrong, I have to discard it. So, that means that we take these big leaps in engineering very, very seriously with caution, because if they go wrong, I'm not going to serve that product. So with the grass-fed, grass-finished beef, concentrated all the moisture out of it, that these are really big events. Like I've lost $30,000 before in a single load because something went wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's going to Fido. That's going to be dog food. I'm going to find some other way to use that, but I'm not serving that to people. And so those kind of punches in the gut, obviously I don't want to just go big or go home and scale up, because I could be losing millions of dollars on each run if we're big enough. So we're trying to do very logical next steps to scale up. And I think every year we've doubled. So I'm pretty happy with that rate. I think we'll continue to grow at that rate, but we want to keep that quality in mind, keep that as our watchword.
How long have y'all been around?
Since 2019.
Wow. That's so fast, man. That's awesome, man. The last question is, if someone's never heard of your brand, never heard of the Carnivore Bar, what would be a message that you would want to give them, and kind of a framework of what you believe and what the company stands for?
Oh, well, I think if you put people first, you would be surprised how much hope there is in the world. That if you take profits, you take ego, you take pride, and you take your limiting beliefs, and you put those all second to the people in your life that you really care about, and you pull out all the stops and you put people in your life that you care about first, you'd truly be inspired by what you find when you do that.
That's awesome, man. Well, Phillip, man, we appreciate your time. We love the company. We love your social media stuff, the educational stuff that you post. So I appreciate you for making time and joining the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.